The Discovery Protocol. The alarm resonated through the crystalline chambers of Scanner Station Omega-7, a sound that had not been heard in over 3 centuries. Scanner Vex 9 of the Ethereal Collective floated before the massive detection array, their translucent form shimmering with concern. The energy patterns flowing through their consciousness indicated something unprecedented had been discovered in the far reaches of the galaxy. Vex 9's tendrils of pure thought interfaced directly with the scanning equipment, downloading terabytes of data in milliseconds. What they found defied all established protocols for galactic surveillance. A small yellow star in an unremarkable spiral arm harbored not just life, but a species that had achieved interstellar capability through methods that seemed almost primitive by Federation standards. The data streams showed a blue-green world, teeming with one dominant species that called themselves humans. These beings had somehow managed to break free from their planetary bonds, using chemical propulsion and basic fusion technology. More disturbing was their biological makeup and behavioral patterns, which registered as massive anomalies in the collective's predictive algorithms. Within moments, Vex 9 transmitted an emergency code throughout the Federation communication network. The message traveled faster than light itself, reaching every corner of civilized space. For the first time in 300 years, the full Cosmic Federation Council would convene for an emergency session. Federation Prime, the massive space station that served as the seat of galactic government, buzzed with activity as representatives from 15 different species gathered in the Grand Assembly. The station itself was a marvel of engineering, a perfect sphere, 50 kilometers in diameter, constructed from materials that could withstand the destruction of entire star systems. Hi. Arbiter Zelton called the session to order with a deep harmonic tone that resonated through the chamber's atmosphere. Zelton belonged to the resonance speakers, beings who communicated through complex sound patterns and whose wisdom had guided the Federation for millennia. Their crystalline form pulsed with authority as they addressed the assembled representatives. The chamber fell silent as Vex 9 materialized at the center, their ethereal form casting no shadow despite the brilliant lighting. They began transmitting the data directly into the consciousness of every being present, a process that would have taken hours through conventional communication methods. War Prime Krex of the Dominion species was the first to react. His massive form, standing 4 meters tall and armored in biomechanical plates, shifted restlessly as the data flowed through his combat-oriented neural pathways. The Dominion had not earned their place on the Council through diplomacy, but through their unmatched prowess in warfare across 1,000 worlds. The data revealed humans as bipedal mammals with incredibly short lifespans, fragile bodies, and limited sensory capabilities. They possessed no natural psychic abilities, no energy manipulation powers, and no apparent connection to the cosmic forces that bound the galaxy together. By every measure used to evaluate species for Federation membership, humans should have been classified as a pre-civilized species requiring protection and guidance. Yet somehow these primitive beings had not only achieved spaceflight but had begun establishing colonies throughout their solar system. More puzzling was their method of problem-solving, which defied every predictive model the Federation had developed over millions of years of contact with emerging species. Dr. Scythe of the Logic Weavers, whose species had transcended emotion and operated on pure mathematical reasoning, found the human data particularly disturbing. Her translucent brain, visible through her crystalline skull, pulsed with rapid calculations as she processed the information. The Logic Weavers had achieved perfection through the elimination of chaos and uncertainty from their existence, making every decision based on optimal outcomes derived from perfect information. The humans, however, seemed to thrive on chaos. Their history was filled with individuals making decisions that mathematical models indicated were suboptimal, yet somehow achieving results that exceeded all rational expectations. They embraced uncertainty as a tool rather than an obstacle, and their greatest achievement seemed to emerge from situations where logic suggested failure was inevitable. Phase Master Quinn of the Void Dancers found the human military data especially intriguing. Her people existed partially outside normal spacetime, allowing them to move through dimensions at will and strike enemies from angles that shouldn't exist. Human warfare, by contrast, was crude and direct, Yet their tactical innovations showed a level of unpredictability that even the Void Dancers found difficult to anticipate. High Arbiter Zelthon resonated a tone of deep concern as the full scope of the human anomaly became clear to the assembled council. According to Federation law, any species that achieved interstellar travel must be evaluated for potential membership. Those who proved worthy joined the galactic community as equals, while those who failed were integrated as protected client species under Federation guidance. The evaluation process was known as the Convergence Trial, and it had remained unchanged for over 10,000 years. A species would send their finest representative to face a series of challenges designed to test not just physical capabilities, but mental adaptability, spiritual awareness, and harmony with cosmic forces. In the entire history of the Federation, only 3 species had successfully completed the trial and joined as full members. What made the human situation unprecedented was not their primitive technology or biological limitations, but the way their behavioral patterns broke every algorithm the Federation used to predict outcomes. The ethereal collective's most advanced consciousness had analyzed human historical data and found that in every major conflict or challenge, humans had achieved victory through methods that should not have worked according to established military and strategic doctrine. Scanner Vex 9 transmitted additional data that sent waves of unease through the chamber. Human individuals showed remarkable variation in capabilities and decision-making processes, making it impossible to predict how any given human would react to specific stimuli. Unlike other species, where individual behavior could be extrapolated from group data, humans seem to operate as unique entities with their own internal logic systems. War Prime Krex spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered systems and crushed rebellions across half the galaxy. He expressed concern that humans might represent a threat to galactic stability, not through superior technology or power, but through their tendency to achieve impossible outcomes through unpredictable methods. The debate that followed lasted for several standard hours, with representatives from each species voicing their concerns and observations. The Harmony Singers worried that human emotional volatility might disrupt the careful balance that maintained peace between Federation species. The Timekeepers expressed concern about humanity's apparent disregard for long-term consequences, in favor of immediate solutions. Finally, High Arbiter Zelthon called for the formal vote that would determine humanity's fate. According to Federation law, if a species was deemed potentially dangerous to galactic civilization, they could be subjected to immediate pacification rather than the standard convergence trial. The vote was close, with 8 species favoring immediate action and 7 supporting the traditional trial process. By the narrowest possible margin, humanity would be granted the opportunity to prove their worthiness through the convergence trial. The decision carried additional stipulations, however. Given the unpredictable nature of human behavior, the trial would be modified to include additional safeguards and monitoring systems to prevent any unexpected developments that might threaten Federation observers. While the Council debated humanity's fate, the people of Earth remained unaware that their planet had been discovered by a galactic civilization. In Geneva, Dr. Elena Vasquez was analyzing deep space radio signals when her equipment detected something that changed everything. The transmission was clearly artificial, structured in mathematical patterns that no natural phenomenon could produce, and it was aimed directly at Earth. Dr. Vasquez had spent her career searching for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence, but nothing had prepared her for the complexity and sophistication of the signal she was receiving. Within hours, she had contacted every major observatory and research facility on the planet, and teams of scientists were working around the clock to decode the message. The breakthrough came when Dr. James Wright at the Arecibo Observatory realized that the signal contained embedded translation protocols. The aliens weren't just sending a message, they were teaching humans how to understand it. Over the course of 3 days, teams of linguists, mathematicians, and computer scientists worked together to unlock the communication. When the message was finally decoded, its contents sent shockwaves through every government on Earth. The transmission identified itself as coming from the Cosmic Federation, a union of 15 intelligent species that governed a significant portion of the galaxy. Earth had been discovered and evaluated, and humanity was being invited to participate in something called the Convergence Trial. The message explained that any species achieving interstellar travel must prove their worthiness to join galactic civilization. Humanity would be allowed to send one representative to face a series of challenges designed to test their species' potential contribution to the greater galactic community. Success would mean membership in the Federation with access to advanced technology and knowledge spanning millions of years. Failure would result in Earth being placed under Federation protection as a client world. The implications were staggering. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and their first contact with alien intelligence came with an ultimatum that would determine the future of their entire species. Within hours of the message's decoding, emergency sessions were being held at the United Nations, and world leaders were grappling with a decision that no human government had ever faced before. Dr. Vasquez found herself at the center of humanity's first contact protocols, leading a hastily assembled team of experts in preparing Earth's response. The alien message had included detailed specifications for a response transmission, along with coordinates for where humanity's representative should report for the trial. The selection process for Earth's champion became the most important decision in human history. Military leaders argued for their finest soldiers, while scientists proposed their most brilliant researchers. Philosophers suggested individuals with the greatest wisdom, and politicians nominated their most skilled negotiators. After days of debate and analysis, the choice fell to Marcus Chen, a former Special Forces operative who had transitioned to civilian contracting work. Chen's military record was exemplary, but what set him apart was his reputation for finding solutions in impossible situations. His psychological profile showed the kind of adaptability and creative problem-solving that experts believed might give humanity its best chance in an unknown challenge. Chen himself was reluctant to accept the responsibility. He understood that he would be representing not just his own life, but the future of every human being on Earth. The weight of that responsibility was almost crushing, but he also recognized that his background had prepared him for exactly this kind of high-stakes, high-uncertainty situation. The alien message had specified that Earth's representative would need to travel to Federation space using coordinates provided in the transmission. Human technology was nowhere near capable of such a journey. But the message indicated that transportation would be provided once humanity confirmed their participation in the trial. Dr. Vasquez worked with Chen to prepare for every possible scenario they could imagine, though they both understood that preparing for the unknown was largely an exercise in futility. The aliens had provided no details about what the trial would involve, only that it would test humanity's worthiness to join galactic civilization. As Earth transmitted their acceptance of the trial and confirmed Marcus Chen as their representative, humanity held its collective breath. In the depths of space, automated Federation systems received the transmission and began preparing for the arrival of Earth's champion. The journey to Federation Prime would take Chen far from everything he had ever known, into a realm of advanced civilizations and technologies beyond human comprehension. He carried with him not just his own hopes and fears, but the dreams and futures of every person on Earth. What none of them could have anticipated was that humanity's greatest strength would prove to be the very thing that made them seem weak and primitive to the advanced species of the Federation. The chaos and unpredictability that marked human nature would soon challenge the very foundations of how galactic civilization understood intelligence, adaptation, and survival. The convergence was about to begin, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The Convergence Trial, the Federation transport vessel that arrived at Earth's coordinates, defied every principle of physics that human science understood. The ship appeared to be constructed from liquid metal that constantly shifted and flowed, yet maintained perfect structural integrity. When Marcus Chen stepped aboard, he felt the artificial gravity adjust automatically to match Earth's conditions, though he noticed the subtle differences that reminded him he was no longer in human space. The journey to Federation Prime took 3 standard days, during which Chen was given access to basic information about the species he might encounter during the trial. The data was overwhelming. describing beings with capabilities that seemed more like magic than science. Yet Chen approached the information with the same methodical analysis he had applied to every mission throughout his military career. Federation Prime appeared before them like a small moon, its crystalline surface reflecting the light of nearby stars in patterns that hurt human eyes to observe directly. The space station was larger than most cities on Earth, and Chen could see thousands of ships moving around it in perfectly coordinated patterns that suggested a level of traffic control beyond human comprehension. As Chen's transport docked with the station, he was met by an entity that introduced itself as Protocol Guide Zenth. Zenth belonged to a species called the Interface Collective, beings who had evolved specifically to facilitate communication between different forms of life. Their body was humanoid in shape, but composed of what appeared to be living circuitry, with patterns of light flowing beneath translucent skin. Zenth explained that the convergence trial would take place in the station's central arena, a facility designed to test representatives from species across the galaxy. The trial itself was divided into 3 phases, each designed to evaluate different aspects of a species' potential contribution to galactic civilization. The first phase would test physical and mental adaptability under stress. The second would evaluate spiritual awareness and connection to cosmic forces. The third phase would assess leadership potential and the ability to make decisions that affected others. Chen would face one champion from the Federation's member species in each phase, with the specific opponent selected based on analytical models of his capabilities. What Zenth did not explain, and what Chen could not have understood even if told, was that the Federation's selection algorithms had never encountered a mind like his. Every previous trial participant had come from species with predictable thought patterns and logical decision-making processes. The algorithms that selected opponents were designed to create challenging but fair contests based on mathematical models of behavior and capability. Chen's psychological profile had broken those algorithms. The systems that analyzed him detected patterns of military training and strategic thinking, but they also found elements of creativity, intuition, and chaotic problem-solving that did not fit any established models. In desperation, the selection systems had chosen opponents based on incomplete data, a situation that had never occurred in the history of the trials. The central arena was a vast circular chamber with a fighting platform in the center and observation galleries rising in tiers around it. As Chen entered the arena, he saw thousands of alien beings filling the galleries, representing species from across the Federation. Many had traveled vast distances to witness what they expected would be another routine demonstration of a primitive species inadequacy. High Arbiter Zelthan's harmonic tones filled the arena as they formally opened the trial proceedings. Chen stood alone on the platform, wearing simple combat gear and carrying only basic weapons that seemed primitive compared to the technology surrounding him. The contrast between the human and his environment was stark, emphasizing just how outmatched he appeared to be. The first opponent emerged from the challenger's entrance with smooth, precise movements that suggested perfect physical control. Champion Thys of the Mindwalkers was tall and slender, with pale skin that seemed to glow with inner light. Their species had evolved powerful psychic abilities over millions of years, allowing them to read thoughts, predict actions, and manipulate opponents through mental influence. Thys had never lost a trial combat because they could anticipate every move their opponent would make before the action was even consciously decided. They approached the center of the platform with confidence, already reaching out with their mind to map Chen's thought patterns and prepare appropriate countermeasures. What Thys encountered instead was something their training had never prepared them for. Chen's mind was not the ordered, logical structure that characterized every other species the Mindwalkers had studied. Instead, they found a chaotic swirl of memories, instincts, training protocols, and emotional responses that seemed to operate according to no rational system. When the trial began, Thys attempted to predict Chen's opening move using standard psychic analysis techniques. Their mental probe indicated that Chen would circle to the left while drawing his sidearm. Instead, Chen rolled forward and to the right, pulled out a combat knife and threw it in a trajectory that mathematical models suggested was completely random. The knife struck Thys in the shoulder, a minor wound that would not have been significant in normal combat. However, the Mindwalker's entire fighting system was based on maintaining perfect mental focus to coordinate psychic attacks with physical movements. The unexpected nature of the attack disrupted their concentration at the critical moment when they were preparing a telepathic assault. Chen followed up his knife throw by charging directly at this, a move that violated every principle of combat against psychic opponents. Standard doctrine suggested maintaining distance and using ranged attacks to avoid mental manipulation. Instead, Chen closed the gap in seconds and tackled the taller alien, bringing the fight into close quarters where This's psychic advantages were minimized. The Mindwalker attempted to use telepathic influence to disorient Chen, projecting images of fear and confusion directly into his consciousness. The technique had proven effective against every previous opponent, overwhelming their mental defenses and leaving them vulnerable to physical attack. Chen's response was to laugh. The sound of genuine human laughter in the middle of a life-or-death combat situation was so unexpected that it momentarily stunned not just This, but the thousands of observers in the galleries. Chen's laughter was not bravado or psychological warfare. It was the spontaneous reaction of someone who found genuine amusement in the absurdity of his situation. That moment of confusion was all Chen needed. He used a basic martial arts technique to pin Thais to the platform, applying pressure to nerve points that were universal among bipedal species. The Mindwalker, who had relied on psychic powers for so long that their physical combat skills had atrophied, found themselves unable to break free from what should have been a simple hold. The first phase of the trial ended with Chen's victory, in under 20 seconds, a result that sent waves of astonishment through the observation galleries. In the Federation's archives, no trial participant had ever defeated a Mindwalker champion, and certainly not through such unconventional methods. The second phase began immediately, with no time for Chen to recover or plan for his next opponent. Forgemaster Bolt of the Steelhearts entered the arena with heavy mechanical footsteps that rang against the platform's surface. The Steelhearts had long ago replaced their biological bodies with mechanical perfection, creating beings that were faster, stronger, and more durable than any natural organism. Bolt stood 3 meters tall, their body constructed from advanced alloys that could withstand temperatures that would vaporize most materials. Their movements were precisely calculated for maximum efficiency, and their reaction times were measured in microseconds, rather than the slower reflexes of biological beings. They had been selected to face Chen because their mechanical nature made them immune to the psychological and unpredictable factors that had defeated This. The Steelheart champion approached the center of the platform with movements so precise, they seemed almost robotic. Every step was calculated to maintain perfect balance and positioning, and their optical sensors tracked Chen with the cold precision of a targeting system. Bolt's strategy was simple: use superior speed and strength to overwhelm the human before he could employ whatever chaotic tactics had defeated the Mindwalker. Chen studied his opponent with the eye of someone who had spent years dealing with advanced military technology. He could see the perfection in Bolt's design, the flawless integration of systems that made the Steelheart a nearly perfect fighting machine. He could also see something that the alien engineers who designed Bolt had not considered: the limitations that came with mechanical perfection. When the second phase began, Bolt moved within human speed, closing the distance to Chen in a fraction of a second. Their attack was mathematically perfect, aimed at the precise point where Chen should have been based on standard evasion patterns. Chen was not there. Instead of moving in any of the predictable directions that Bolt's targeting systems had calculated, Chen dropped flat to the platform and rolled sideways in a pattern that seemed almost random. Bolt's perfectly aimed strike hit empty air, and their momentum carried them slightly past their intended position. Chen came up from his roll already moving, not attacking Bolt directly, but instead targeting the platform itself. He had noticed that the arena floor was constructed from segments that could be adjusted for different types of combat. Using his combat knife, he pried at the edge of one segment, causing it to shift slightly. The movement was minimal, perhaps only a few centimeters, but it was enough to create an uneven surface where Bolt expected perfect flatness. When the Steelheart's next calculated step landed on the shifted segment, their balance algorithms had to compensate for the unexpected irregularity. That split second of recalibration was the opening Chen needed. Rather than trying to match Bolt's mechanical strength, he used the alien's own momentum against them. A simple hip throw, executed at precisely the right moment, sent the 3-meter-tall steel heart crashing to the platform. Bolt recovered quickly, their mechanical body absorbing the impact that would have injured a biological being. However, Chen had not expected the throw to cause damage. Instead, he had used it to position himself where he could access the connection points where Bolt's limbs attached to their torso. Human military training included extensive instruction in disabling enemy equipment, and Chen approached Bolt's mechanical body as he would any other piece of advanced machinery. He found the access panel for the Steelheart's left arm assembly and began systematically disconnecting power and control cables. Bolt's response was immediate and violent, but their remaining limbs could not reach the angle where Chen had positioned himself. The Steelheart's perfect mechanical design had not accounted for an opponent who treated them as a machine to be disabled, rather than an enemy to be defeated through superior force. The second phase ended with Bolt effectively paralyzed, their mechanical perfection turned against them by an opponent who understood that even the most advanced systems had points of failure. The victory took 32 seconds, again far faster than any previous trial participant had ever achieved. The third and final phase would test Chen against Phase Hunter Wisp of the Void Dancers, beings who existed partially outside normal space-time. Wisp materialized on the platform as a shifting form of pure energy, sometimes solid, sometimes translucent, always moving in ways that defied three-dimensional physics. The Void Dancers were considered the most dangerous opponents in the trial because they could attack from angles that should not exist and phase through most forms of defense. Wisp had been selected because their energy-based existence made them immune to physical attacks, rendering Chen's unconventional combat techniques useless. Chen stared at his final opponent and realized that everything he had learned about combat was meaningless against a being made of pure energy. He could not grapple with something that had no solid form, could not predict the movements of something that was not bound by physical laws, and could not disable something that had no mechanical components. For the first time since the trial began, Chen felt the weight of representing his entire species. The first two victories had been achieved through adaptability and creative thinking. But Phase Hunter Wisp presented a challenge that seemed beyond any solution he could devise. Then Chen did something that no algorithm could have predicted, and no previous trial participant had ever attempted. He sat down in the center of the platform, placed his weapon on the ground beside him, and closed his eyes. The action was so unexpected that it stopped Phase Hunter Wisp in the middle of preparing an energy attack. The Void Dancer had never encountered an opponent who simply stopped fighting, and their combat protocols had no procedures for dealing with passive resistance. Chen opened his eyes and looked directly at Wisp, speaking for the first time since the trial began. "I can't fight you," he said simply. "You're made of energy, you can phase through matter, and you can attack from dimensions I can't even perceive. In any direct confrontation, you would defeat me in seconds." The arena fell, completely silent. In the observation galleries, thousands of alien beings struggled to understand what they were witnessing. Surrender was not unknown in the trials, but it typically came after prolonged combat that demonstrated the participants' inadequacy. Chen had surrendered before the fight even began, yet his tone suggested something other than defeat. "But," Chen continued, still looking directly at Wisp, "the trial isn't really about fighting, is it? It's about demonstrating how my species would contribute to galactic civilization. And sometimes the most important contribution is knowing when not to fight." Phase Hunter Wisp hovered motionless above the platform, their energy form flickering with confusion. They had been prepared for combat, for an opponent who would attempt various physical and tactical approaches before inevitably failing. They had not been prepared for an opponent who analyzed the situation, recognized the futility of direct confrontation, and chose a completely different approach. Chen stood up slowly, still making no aggressive moves. "My species has survived, for thousands of years, not because we're the strongest or the smartest, but because we know how to adapt. Sometimes that means fighting against impossible odds. Sometimes it means finding ways to work together with beings completely different from ourselves. He gestured to the observation galleries filled with diverse alien species. Every species in this federation found a way to coexist, despite having different capabilities, different needs, different ways of thinking. That's what my species can contribute, the ability to find solutions that don't involve defeating others. The arena remained silent as the implications of Chen's words sank in. He had not surrendered in the traditional sense, but had instead reframed the entire trial as something other than a combat exercise. He was demonstrating humanity's potential contribution to galactic civilization, not through victory in battle, but through the wisdom to seek alternatives to conflict. Phase Hunter Wisp slowly descended to the platform, their energy form stabilizing into something approaching a solid shape. When they spoke, their voice carried harmonics that suggested deep thought and consideration. In 3,000 years of trials, Wisp said, no participant has ever suggested that the test itself might be approached differently than through direct confrontation. Your species sees patterns that others do not. High Arbiter Zelthon's harmonic tones filled the arena, calling for the formal conclusion of the trial. Chen had completed all 3 phases in a total time of less than 2 minutes, achieving results that would be discussed and analyzed throughout the Federation for generations to come. The Council's deliberation took place in emergency session, with representatives from all 15 species struggling to evaluate what they had witnessed. Chen had not simply won through superior capability. He had demonstrated that humans approached problems from angles that other species had never considered. War Prime Krex, who had initially opposed allowing humans to take the trial, was the first to acknowledge what had occurred. This species does not think like any of us, he admitted. Their unpredictability is not a weakness but a strength that could benefit the entire Federation. Dr. Scythe of the Logic Weavers found herself recalculating fundamental assumptions about intelligence and problem-solving. Chen's approach had been logical in a way that transcended pure mathematical reasoning, incorporating factors that her species had long ago eliminated from their decision-making processes. The vote to admit humanity to full Federation membership was unanimous, the first time in recorded history that all 15 species had agreed on a trial outcome. Chen had not just proven humanity's worthiness. He had demonstrated that his species possessed capabilities that could enhance the collective wisdom of galactic civilization. When the results were announced, the celebration on Earth was unlike anything in human history. Humanity had not only avoided subjugation but had achieved full membership in a galactic community that offered access to knowledge and technology beyond their wildest dreams. Marcus Chen returned to Earth as the most famous human who had ever lived, but he carried with him a deeper understanding of what had really occurred during the trial. Humanity's greatest strength was not their ability to defeat superior opponents, but their capacity to find new ways of thinking about old problems. The Federation would never be the same. For the first time in thousands of years, they had encountered a species whose thought patterns were so different that they challenged the basic assumptions underlying galactic civilization. The age of predictable, orderly expansion was over. The age of human influence in the galaxy had begun, and with it came possibilities that no algorithm could calculate and no advanced civilization could predict. The universe had become a far more interesting and unpredictable place, exactly the kind of environment where humans thrived. In the end, humanity had not crushed the aliens through superior force or technology. They had accomplished something far more significant. They had shown that there were always new ways to approach any challenge, and that the most primitive species could sometimes see solutions that the most advanced civilizations had overlooked. The Chandi, 50 seconds that changed everything, had not been about victory in combat, but about victory through understanding. And in a galaxy full of ancient species who thought they had seen everything, that made all the difference.